Hello, I'm Harry Riley. Welcome to Harry's 10-Minute Tales. This is called Toby Mullins and the Derelict Windmill, a short story by Harry Riley. This story is fiction, and resemblance to anyone living or dead is coincidental. Their eyes met, and the young priest shook his head sadly as he threw a couple of parish coins into the apron pocket of the old village midwife. Far better he was stillborn, he mused. There were two adults in the plain whitewashed bedroom of the tiler's cottage, the old woman cradling the screaming newborn baby with the wildly rolling eyes, and the priest, plus the dead mother on the bed. The priest had concluded his work of administering the last rites over the dying girl, and he stopped now in the doorway for a final word with the woman holding the child. "I suppose father is unknown?" Without waiting for the obvious answer, he continued, "Didn't she have relatives in the village? An older sister and her husband?" The midwife nodded. "Well, I'll call round and see if they'll take the baby, though why they should I don't know, as he'll never amount to anything." Rufus and Melinda were the relatives of the dead girl, Beverly Mullins, and were at home when the priest called with his grim news. Rufus was a middle-aged man, the village blacksmith, and lifeboat volunteer, but who now walked with a limp after being severely injured during a dangerous rescue attempt. He listened patiently as the priest explained the baby was born with brain damage. Melinda was a kind-hearted soul who had no hesitation in sharing their meagre accommodation with their sister's baby, and said they would willingly solve the parish's difficulty. Rufus was like-minded, and so the baby was brought to live with them. Toby was to grow up strongly in the East Anglian village of Little Weeping by the sea, but declared incapable of learning, and so spent most of his young life assisting Uncle Rufus in the old barn. Farm implements were brought in for repair, and Rufus would tell the young lad tales of countryside folklore as they worked together, although he was sure very little was sinking in. The lad was a willing helper, but spoke very little, and kept his head down most of the time. Occasionally he would break out in a loud bark of a laugh at nothing, and then his head would be back down again as if in concentration. One of his favourite tales was about the ruined windmill on the cliff top at the edge of the village. In 1863, a violent gale had struck along the coast, smashing down homes and causing many shipwrecks and loss of life. The miller had looked out from his windmill, and observing a ship in distress being cast on the nearby rocks, had commandeered a large rowboat and single-handedly rescued most of the crew, going back out repeatedly in atrocious wind and rain, braving mountainous waves to win through. After his final success in bringing the mariners back to safety, he had retired to his windmill home, and there had expired of a strained heart. Toby asked for this tale so many times that Rufus finally gave up, saying the windmill had become derelict, and since that time, as they were 10 a penny along that coast, it would never run again. Toby grew up to be a short, squat youth with an unusually strong upper body and thick arms. It was almost as if nature was compensating him for his damaged brain. The local lads saw him as an easy target, and would mock him as the village idiot. He never responded to their jeers, but one day, as he wandered along the cliff path by the old ruined windmill, he stopped to look at it. It seemed lonely and despised, just like him. So he mounted the steps and went inside. Without knowing quite why he did it, he started playing about with the mechanism and cleaning the ancient gear wheels, working with his hands just as he'd seen Rufus do with the farm implements. All that summer he toiled away in the windmill, quietly by himself, and then, on a windy day, he returned home and told Rufus he'd seen the windmill sails turning. Rufus was old and tired, and told the boy he should stop his nonsense, or they would come and take him away from them and put him in the asylum. So Toby did as he was told, and he never mentioned it again. It was one night several months later when a violent storm broke out. A ship was wrecked just offshore, and men were wailing, their misery echoing in the wind. All along the coast people fearfully battened down their shutters and kept inside, lest they be swept away by the tremendous gale. Even the lifeboat failed to turn out, as it was much too dangerous. It was now quite dark, and Toby, asleep in the windmill after a busy cleaning session, awoke to the screaming of men in mortal distress on the high seas. He remembered the miller's tale and ran down to the beach where he spotted a rowing boat. With his powerful arms, he swung the craft into the breakers and rowed out to the ship, its timbers creaking in the howling storm as he crashed and splintered on the merciless rocks. And like the miller before him, he made many trips, braving the dangerous swirling undercurrents, backwards and forwards on his own, and he saved the crew from certain death. He didn't know enough to be afraid. Next morning, as the villagers rejoiced at so many lives being saved, the vicar, the same one who had given Toby's mother the last rites, although now much older, quizzed the men on their miraculous escape. Who helped you? Who would dare go out on a night like that? He didn't speak much, said the grateful captain. Just said his name was Toby. And then when he'd brought us all safely ashore, he vanished. A real hero. The priest was perplexed and went to see Rufus, who said Toby had not returned home that night. Word quickly spread, and the whole village raced up the half-mile slope to the windmill. They gaped awestruck as its sails were turning again in the wind. The priest went inside, and there on the dusty floor, and stone-cold dead, was the body of Toby. Just like the miller many years before him, the strain of his exertions had proved too much. As the police later remarked to a crowded funeral congregation, in life Toby, the simpleton, didn't amount to much, but in death he was a great hero, an inspiration to all.